It is June 2019. The crowd in Japan waits with bated breath, eyes glued at the entrance ramp for the first time appearance of the hottest wrestler in the world in the New Japan ring. The entrance ramp remains empty, however, as in his signature style, Jon Moxley enters through the crowd itself, as people go crazy for the man of the hour. Freshly granted release from a contractual obligation with the world's biggest wrestling company worth years, or as he would like to put it, uncaged, the enigmatic brawler sends blood on the other side of the pond. Standing opposite him is a flamboyant New Japan Pro Wrestling United States champion, Juice Robinson, who, although has history with the man, is as clueless as a regular New Japan fan is. You see, as experts would claim, you can go and study Moxley's past, but you will find all those study tapes render useless to counter a reformed man who's on a course to redeem himself. A course that very much causes a domino effect,
You owe everyone an apology.
the epicenter of which lies in the 29th edition of the famed G1 Climax tournament.
They think I'm some kind of rogue dickhead.
But let's not get ahead. After destroying Juice and claiming his title, Moxley declares himself for the tournament, just 2 months away, itching to prove himself in front of the elite to take back the years stolen from him. And so, without further ado, we jump forward to August. With the theme of redemption playing through his arc, it almost makes sense the people that punch with him in the B block are all at their own varying stages of transformation, owing to either neglect or not being close enough to their full potential, meaning almost every opponent in a way could relate to John and him relate to them. Moxley is not out for blood or boast superiority over a region like most gaijins. Instead, it is deep rooted respect for these athletes and a deep rooted respect for competition. At least that is what I got from the first few matches. To many disgruntled fans, Jon Moxley for many years as Dean Ambrose was a flanderized character. Flanderization in media is an act of boiling down a character to one or at most two of their most basic traits that happens over a course of years. The lunatic fringe became a crazed and bumbling persona with no depth or sophistication for that matter. He was just that, which is why when Jon Moxley enters a New Japan arena, stripped down to the bare ring attire of traditional black tights and shoes, with of course his signature barbed wires imprinted on them, it becomes symbolic of the change that Moxley is willing to undergo. Along with his characteristic brawling style, there's a lot more depth that he brings to the table. His hardened exterior and tough head absorb every hit, while using a more sophisticated style of striking wins him points and the cheers of the fans. His first opponent in Taiji, professionally frustrated wrestler at this point, feels the neglect of the system and the fans and yearns to make a statement. Attacking Moxley outside the ring before the match even started turned out to be a big mistake though, as Moxley bulldozes through. With the help of a brutal looking Regal knee, a knee strike that calls back to his rivalry with William Regal before joining the main WWE roster, became the difference maker and also sent a message in how he had to almost skip past WWE to find his calling from a rival he had 7 years ago. The match became a prototype for a Moxley led affair. Not only was he able to bulldoze past his opponent, he did it while charming the audience with his charisma and antics. Fans loved this new anti hero among them. But here is where Moxley as a wrestler gets interesting. See, it would be cool if a brawler acted like a crazed maniac most of the times, but Moxley mixes this core characteristic with supreme technicality and intelligent maneuvering. He is a smarty smart cookie. His next match is against an immensely strong and insanely agile Jeff Cobb. Moxley plays a game of chess with Cobb. He keeps targeting his left shoulder and stamina throughout the match while baiting Cobb to these dangerous looking spots. Moxley knows he has this hardened exterior that could be used into baiting opponents to show fire and throw caution to the wind, but he plays this illusion of it as he coyly evades dangerous attacks himself so that he could preserve his own body and stature. With this, he drives Cobb into a literal corner. Stuck between the ropes, Cobb eats a vicious looking regal knee and a painful hanging death rider The streak of smart working continues into a stock fight with Tomohiro Ishii, trying to put the stone pitbull to sleep by cutting his airflow and attacking his stamina. Bowing his head in respect for the opponent before finishing him off was the true essence of Jon Moxley and what gravitated the fans towards him. Moments like this, along with sometimes stroking fun at the referee Red Shoes Uno and his deep regard for the stage and the people, made Moxley even more beloved. Three opponents down, his masterpiece lays ahead as he now faces off against the Dragon of New Japan, Shingo Takagi, an old friend in fact, with them going way back to their days in the American independent scene. Moxley goes on to prove why he was one of the smartest players in the game. He shows smooth transitions in himself as he switches from violent to strength to technique with no effort, placing all his shots perfectly. He systematically starts taking down the leg of Takagi with brutal submissions and pinpointed attacks. Shingo being one of the fastest and the hardest hitters in the tournament, the game plan shows immediate effect as he struggles to find his feet. Although he keeps limping forward, Moxley has an answer to his spirit and his heart. Taking out his leg becomes so effective that Moxley did not even need to hit his finisher as he makes a recently transitioned heavyweight tap out with a submission hold instead. Moxley was not just uncaged, he was effectively revitalized, an unstoppable machine on a mission. You would think his propensity for being unhinged would be abused by him, with violence shedding across all his matches, but he sticks to his guns. He does not go for the easy option, even when he's expected to and tempted to. Of course, he'd lay a sneaky chair shot, but only when an opponent cheats first. He is not virtuous like every other hero, and people loved him for it. At this point, it is fair to think that nothing could go wrong. That even if he loses his footing here and there, as is likely with most tournaments, he will still come out strong willed and steadfast, firm to his beliefs and ideology and better off than what he started as. That is what I thought at least. But can I really make a video about someone without exposing their flaws? No, I cannot. His fifth match shows Moxley a kind of mirror, both unhinged in their own ways. Tetsuya Naito is what Jon Moxley could have been, had they not been so far off in the spectrum of Tranquilo to batshit crazy. It is fitting that this match reveals the turning point in Moxley's tournament arc. It is the first match where Moxley goes on the defensive for a good amount during the opening. Owing to how unpredictable Naito is, he easily gets on Moxley's nerves even before the bell rung and drives him over the edge with his antics. So much so that for the first time since the tournament began, we see John do certain things without rhyme or reason. Like, for example, wasting his energy trying to attack Naito's arm. That does not really change Naito's gameplay. This, followed by the single moment that kind of creates that divide between the early stage marks and the latter half. Clouded by impatience, John decides to brutally end Naito's run then and there, as he fixates on destroying Naito's leg wrapped in a chair with another chair. An external force interferes for the first time in the play. This is the referee Red Shoes Uno, the man who usually took Moxley's playful angst on a light note, deciding to stop Moxley from going overboard. It low-key brings out a philosophy of match officiating in Japan. It effectively goes like, go ahead and kill your opponent as long as it's in the spirit of the game. It is at these officials' discretion to decide that, for better or for worse, depending on who you are. If you are Moxley, you are probably livid because Naito takes advantage of the distraction. As the pace quickens though, Moxley hits jackpot by delivering a devastating spinning lariat to a Naito dealing with horrendous neck issues. As luck would have it, Naito takes heavy damage and unable to recover in time is finished with a Death Rider by an opportunistic Moxley. Having now conquered over one of the biggest stars in the company, Moxley vows to destroy all his opponents and declares that he would not be denied, unaware that the man that stands in front of him next was going to change everything and create a paradigm shift. The wrestler perceived to be impenetrable until now has finally come to meet his match in a bout against a man that almost all of you have been waiting for since the video began. The veteran trickster of New Japan, Toru Yano. Surely, with 5 wins in his name, sitting comfortably on top of the points table, Moxley for sure thought about taking a breather and have some fun. Obviously, he had no idea Toru Yano was the ultimate gambler who has stolen wins from the mightiest of competitors before and wriggled away. And he could do it again. But I want to talk about something deeper here. Toru Yano wasn't always a clown prince. What he was in the decade that preceded that match was a hard-nosed brawler, not unlike Jon Moxley, a supremely talented amateur wrestler at that, someone that seemed angry and frustrated with the choices he was making. Just like Jon, Yano had to go through a transformation to be who he is, beloved by fans and seemingly happy. Moxley, who had been successfully baiting his opponents in smartly devised ways to make mistakes, was himself outpaced by the comedy act. Yano was always 2 steps ahead, pushing Moxley into a position where he had to comically attempt to race back to the ring after being taped together with Shota Umino, his temporary protege. With Moxley not being able to reach the ring before the 20 count ended, Yano manages to steal another win from under someone's nose in an epic heist, and he becomes the hero of G1 Climax 29. Moxley is left shocked, his first ever loss in a New Japan ring, following such events. Yano unknowingly bared Moxley's one big flaw. Frustration had been one of the biggest motivators for John post his WWE release. But it can only take you so far. Frustration can never pave a path to salvation. It is only when you reach the stage of letting it go that you can find true redemption. Almost nobody today remembers Yano as the once hated angry brawler. Yano had found his peace, and so it was fitting that Jon Moxley was delivered his first defeat at the hands of the Master Thief, making this loss heavily symbolic, in my eyes at least. Right, so we are still on a healthy course. Almost perfect, in fact. One little blimp in the record is not really a big deal. If we just take a breath, evaluate our strategy, there's still a good chance we could reclaim. And Jon Moxley decides to plunge head on into Jay White, attacking him even before the bell rings. Something seemed to be odd. A simple loss cannot really rattle someone to this extent. Moxley was starting to act uncharacteristic of himself. Or was he? At around the same time, across the other side of the globe, wrestling world was buzzing with excitement with AEW's event All Out just on the horizon, with a card being topped by the much awaited clash between a fresh Japan export, Kenny Omega, and a WWE released megastar, Jon Moxley. This was seemingly what it was all about. Moxley's claim to entering the tournament was not a bid to dominate the world, but to prove that he could handle the same ordeals that his fated rival had in his journey to where he is now. Kenny, having won the G1 in his very first attempt, being a constant banging in the back of Jon Moxley's head, and the date was closing in for that battle. The Moxley we were seeing here was a different person than what we had been witnessing. It wasn't uncharacteristic, it was bound to happen. The pressure was surmounting. Does not help with the fact that the man he was facing knew a thing or two about exploiting every weakness like a fox. Jay White and Gato had an answer to everything Moxley could dish out. Every hit by John was met with an interference by Gato, giving White the opportunity to recover and hit back. Their cheating ways were a bit much to handle for Moxley, and he suffers his first pinfall loss in the company. Now on a losing streak, things did not seem to go easy for him, as his next opponent was a man that Kenny Omega himself beat in the finals to win the G126. Hiroki Goto. The samurai was well past his prime here at this stage, so he decided to go back to his roots. Ditching his traditional hakama vest and coming out wearing a dojo t-shirt, it was a tribute to his childhood friend and rival Katsuyori Shibata, whom he had been training with in preparation for the G1. Moxley comes in with aggression and determination and even outperforms Goto in the opening stages of the match, but the desperation was seeping in. Not only that, but the crowd was also audibly slipping away. The cracks of a fall were showing. Goto shocks the world by doing the seemingly unthinkable, and that is to beat Jon Moxley with his finisher, the GTR. It's a wholesome victory for a man down on his luck. Moxley, on the other hand, was left in a tricky spot, with 10 points, the highest in his block still, yet with a real strong chance to lose his spot in the finals. His goal was slipping out of his hands, and there was only one final person standing in the way for him. That man was a person we started the story with, the former United States champion, Juice Robinson. A glint of determination in his eyes, already having parted with his long locks, it was as if parting ways with a part of himself. Jon Moxley was no longer an enigma for Juice. There are no fears left in him. Moxley, however, was a different man, a more dangerous man. Now fully embracing his unhinged side, Jon wastes no time in introducing chess into the affair. But Juice denies him the use of foreign objects at every step. Moxley tries to go for Juice's leg, but in a payback for that previous encounter, Juice bites Moxley's ear, now playing his game. Despite the emotions of the match, Juice keeps his head while frustration clouds Moxley. It is like he is devolving into something he had been running away from. His confidence stride from just a few months back has turned into frantic pacing, showing us a tiny glimpse of Dean Ambrose. Not unlike his character of the past, Moxley makes crucial mistakes in the heat of his burning passion, with no one else to blame but himself. Even going for tables, but Juice retaliates and puts the tables back beneath the ring, now dictating the flow of the match himself. Moxley makes a fatal error by letting impatience get the best of him. He had the match practically won at one point, with a chokehold locked in for minutes. Confident that Juice had lost consciousness by the time Red Shoes finished his 3 count, he lets go of the hold before the official could even fully confirm Juice's passing out and starts celebrating. The frustration clouds him as he starts arguing with Red Shoes, an action signifying his complete regression at this point. He loses his cool. Juice Robinson, on the other hand, smartly baits him, and after a deciding pulp friction, he finally pins his nemesis, finding his own redemption. The overall story of this emotional final bout being that Juice denies Moxley the weapons that Jon was out to prove he did not need to win. And that was the end of Jon Moxley's G1 campaign. It is not a happy one, is it? Jon Moxley's tournament arc was not that of triumph. In fact, far from it. Like Red Shoes being a subtle external factor for Moxley's arc, some external aftershocks still remained for Jon to experience. Now on his way back to America to fight Kenny, he's faced with yet another devastating blow when his match at All Out is cancelled due to an injury Mox suffered, requiring a surgery. While there are no direct correlations between his grueling G1 schedule and a staph infection, Kenny Omega took to an interview to voice his disdain over Moxley's actions.
And then you went to Japan. How did that tournament go in Japan? Did you win?
That going over to compete in the G1 instead of preparing and training for his own match was disrespectful to his opponent, as if taking things too far. Jon Moxley did return to confront Kenny months later and beat him up. His actions out of frustration yet again came back to bite him, as a normal singles match with Kenny was now turned into an unsanctioned match at the upcoming event Full Gear.
Don't pretend that you're upset about this being a hardcore match. What else were you gonna do?
Effectively rendering the results of the match pointless, as they would not show in the record book, even if Jon wins, which he does. But it's not the kind of victory that he wanted. His pursuit of getting a clean win in the records over Kenny Omega continues to this day, as Jon is still considered winless against him. Jon Moxley's tournament arc is not that of triumph. Far from it. It's a story of frustration and rage and how it eats away at a man. And the fact that it makes a world renowned wrestler at the prime of his career relatable to people watching is why I consider this arc so great. It's an age old story told within the confines of a squared circle. Not everyone that enters a tournament does so out of a noble or one dimensional motive to just win. Some have a chip on their shoulders. Moxley was just that. His goals were not perfect in a protagonistic kind of a sense. In isolation, his Jivan arc is unique even to himself, as he never really gets to strip away all those layers and just wrestle. It was a unique glimpse for even his fans, who had never seen a lot of the technically sound mastermind that he is. And none of this is to discredit the person. Many athletes before Jon Moxley had stepped away from the sport, owing to frustrations that the career warrants, and many of those names even retired, allowing their experiences taint their love for wrestling itself. Jon Moxley steps away from WWE and its grueling travel schedule to immediately travel to Japan to enter into this tournament famous for being punishing to its competitors. And if that does not scream passion, I don't know what does. A tournament has a function towards everyone. The G1 had a role for Moxley, and that was to show him he had a long way to go, and the only way he could further himself was to let go of his past. But hey, is there a tournament arc from any part of the world that you would like me to cover? Tell me down in the comments. Cheers. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.